As 6 Hanford workers rolled into the ER in the last 3 weeks, sick after inhaling unknown vapors, and 20 more off to a doctor, their employer sent out public statements. The government contractor, Washington River Protection Solutions, or WRPS, said employees reported throat and nasal irritation and headaches. But good news, every worker had been checked out and released to return to work. The Hanford On-Site Medical Center, run by another government contractor, deemed every single patient A-OK to get back on the job. That is misleading. We found the situation is far more serious than the feds and its contractors are letting on. All of the employees were not and still are not back to work. And many have symptoms far worse than an irritation.
I felt kind of dizzy, like almost, like I couldn't walk.
It's just like I can't get a good deep breath. It's like a real shallow breath all the time.
Steve Ellingson and Becky Holland are veteran Hanford workers in good standing. When we sat down with them last week, neither was back to work, and both were fighting off serious symptoms.
It was hard for me to get my nose to stop bleeding.
Right before coming to the interview, a doctor cauterized Becky's nose to stop a week's worth of nosebleeds, and Steve spent all of the day before throwing up.
I was coughing so hard that it would start the gag reflex and I was throwing up.
How worried are you?
If you'd asked me this a week ago, I would have said, oh, it's probably going to go away. Now I'm getting worried because this is 2 weeks and it's not better. Yesterday was the worst day I've had. So, I don't know. I'm getting worried that this may be the way I am the rest of my life.
Part of the worry? None of the exposed workers knows exactly what's gotten inside their bodies. They all work in what are called tank farms, right above the underground nuclear waste storage tanks, holding millions of gallons of the deadliest material on the planet. During 4 decades of plutonium production at the site for the country's nuclear weapons program, hundreds of chemicals were used in the process. Lethal substances such as butanol, formaldehyde, mercury, and nitrous oxide. Remember the woman we saw going into the ER? That was Becky Holland, who's worried about all those unknowns since that day.
If you don't know what you're exposed to, you don't know, what you can expect in the future. What kind of, I have these symptoms today, what am I going to have tomorrow? Or what am I going to have in 5 years?
Well, the WRPS president, Dave Olson, has assured the workers, your safety is my primary concern as we cope with these events. Not everyone is buying it.
The lack of concern is discouraging to me.
Once out of the hospital, Becky Holland visited that clinic run by the company HPMC. After listing off her symptoms, nosebleeds, intense headaches, sweats, and shaking, what did the HPMC provider do? Handed over a pain reliever, a cough drop, and a clearance to return to work.
I was offended. Almost like you're making all this up. Here's some Tylenol and a throat lozenge. Now get to work.
And as Steve Ellingson deals with burning lungs and nonstop coughing,
I'm sorry,
using inhalers and narcotics to cope, HPMC gave him an official cleared to work document, but he hasn't gotten much more from his company or the federal government.
Has anyone from the federal government called and asked, how are you doing, Steve?
No one. None.
All of the exposed workers we've talked to are waiting for answers. What toxins did they inhale? What's in store for their health? In the meantime, these two have taken an unusual step. With Hanford's long-standing culture of secrecy and documented retaliation, few speak out. But with 50 years of experience between them, Steve Ellingson and Becky Holland say the time for change is now.
I think that the truth should be the truth. I don't think you should tell people that everybody's fine. They're all back to work, it's all okay. That place has got some dangerous stuff. And if other people, if it's going to save people by us saying something, I'd sure like to see people get, a better deal. I know I don't want to be like this.
What have they done to you?
Essentially ruined my life. They've literally destroyed me.
Lonnie Poteet worked at Hanford for 12 years, and during that time, less than 1 hour on the job changed his life forever.
Half hour, 45 minutes, you're breathing in some of the most toxic substances on the planet.
Correct. The wind was carrying it right to me.
In 2007, this hose on the left of your screen ruptured, spilling 85 gallons of radioactively contaminated chemicals onto the ground. Crews were evacuated, but hours later, Lonnie Poteet showed up for work completely unaware of the hazard. No one called to say, stay away.
They knew I was coming to that pump. They knew it had malfunctioned. Why didn't they tell me?
Once a standout football star, coach, and outdoorsman, Poteet can't do any of that anymore.
I get these cancer growths on my head every now and then.
The Department of Energy has admitted inhaling those unknown chemical vapors directly caused Lonnie Poteet's health problems, the worst of which is something called trigeminal neuralgia, a degenerative disease that suddenly and repeatedly shoots electric-like bolts through the face. It's considered one of the most painful conditions known to man.
Do you have any idea what...
Go ahead.
Was that a bad one?
Yeah.
During our interview, we witnessed the pain hit Lonnie several times.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on, it sounds like this is...
Go ahead.
What's happening right now?
I get these shots of pain. It's just daily living.
And how bad can that be?
Sometimes I'm just, whatever you want to call it, I'm down for the day. I have to lay in the room and stay in the dark. And sometimes it's all day.
He isn't alone. We've met many Hanford workers with diseases caused by chemical vapors at the site. Don Slaw's breathing problems are so serious, he's on 4 liters of oxygen a night. Diana Gegg is permanently disabled with brain damage and vision loss. Ed Bricker suffers from lung disease and skin cancers. At the beginning, none of them questioned their safety on the job. They'd been told, "We've got your back" at Hanford.
Yeah, that's the first thing they feed you, is that it's safety first.
10 years before Poteet's accident, this Department of Energy study, the Hewitt Report, brought the workforce good news. It showed the vapor risk to workers does not exist. Chemical releases from the tanks are well below OSHA levels, and in most cases, respiratory protection isn't necessary. But we found at the exact same time this report came out, assuring the workers that all was well at the Hanford tank farms, the U.S. Department of Energy was conducting its own research at this lab in Richland. Their study found something very different, that the chemical vapors were extremely dangerous for the workers. This report showed that, yes, most vapor exposures do not exceed OSHA regulation, but that doesn't matter. Tank farm workers are at great risk of getting cancer and other chronic diseases from chemical vapors, and it's unclear whether cancer is induced after chronic exposure or perhaps after a single release.
I was never told of anything like that.
And as you can see...
We showed Poteet the study which scientists at the Pacific Northwest National Lab finished a decade before his exposure. He said he would have insisted on wearing a respirator or air tank if he would have known.
I sure wished I'd have had this, because it would make a difference, and it really upsets a person to know that they could have done more to protect you, but you're just a number to them, and they run you through and they'll hire another guy right behind me.
We found the Department of Energy didn't make the report public, share the results with workers, or with the federally chartered Hanford Advisory Board. It's their job to consider science and make recommendations to help keep workers safe.
Are you saying you never saw this report?
No, I didn't see that report.
And should you have?
Absolutely.
Dr. Tim Tuccaro is a renowned toxicologist and medical doctor who served on the advisory board's Health and Safety Committee when the scientists came up with the findings.
It's very upsetting as an occupational medicine physician and public health practitioner that an opportunity for better protecting workers at Hanford was missed, apparently.
But I believe that we have to solve the vapor issue.
At a public meeting in Richland last month, the head of the Department of Energy at Hanford, Kevin Smith, acknowledged the potential hazards from chemical vapors.
We know that some vapors are very harmful. Some vapors can cause health issues. Some vapors can cause death. So the answer is some vapors can do that.
Yet those in charge at Hanford in the mid-90s weren't admitting that and weren't sharing information that could have spared sick workers like Lonnie Poteet.
They've taken my life and screwed it up. How much they've shortened it, I don't know. I feel really betrayed. They lied to me.
We're in Washington, D.C. tonight to speak with our congressional leaders and experts about this unfair system. We've met one Hanford worker after another who doctors say got sick from their work at the site, yet the federal government takes a different approach, to deny them over and over when they reach out for help.
He was such a special person. Everybody loved him.
Gary Sal was a family man, fisherman, and outgoing life of the party. His wife Barb says he was also one of those people who couldn't wait to get out the door for work.
Right now, he would be your very best friend, because within 5 minutes you fell in love with him and he fell in love with you. It happened all the time.
For 28 years, Gary Sal charged off to Hanford for work as a carpenter, working lots of jobs in what's called the tank farms. That's where the U.S. Department of Energy stores millions of gallons of cancer-causing nuclear byproducts in aging underground tanks. A toxic legacy from the bomb-making era, inherited by new generations to clean up. And as the waste breaks down in those tanks, they often release poisonous chemical vapors into the air, where workers, like carpenters, can inhale them.
We thought we were safe. We thought, you know, they knew what they were doing. But they don't have a clue.
About 10 years ago, Gary Sal started forgetting things, and his brain function got worse and worse. Within 5 years, he couldn't work, could barely speak, hallucinated, and operated on the level of a 4-year-old. Doctors at Harborview diagnosed him with work-related toxic encephalopathy, a degenerative brain disorder. The cause, according to the experts, breathing in those chemicals at Hanford.
You totally lose everything you ever had. Your memories, your mind, your thought process. Everything's gone. It's just a shell.
Barb documented that suffering in a difficult-to-watch video taken in 2011. That once upbeat, athletic, skilled craftsman, now in a hospital bed, trembling and frightened.
Yes?
On a feeding tube.
I'm right here.
Come on.
I'm right here.
No, you ain't coming around. No.
No?
No,
What's wrong?
I don't want him in here.
You don't want him in here?
No.
Okay. Okay. Nobody's gonna come in here.
It got to where no one should ever see their loved one go through what he went through. It got very, very bad.
Originally, the federal officials whose job it is to help sick Hanford workers like Gary disagreed with his doctors. The Department of Energy's insurer wrote that not Hanford, but alcohol consumption or a B12 deficiency could be making him sick. Barb Sal battled for over a year before the feds admitted that, yes, exposure to heavy metals and chemicals at the site damaged his brain. She says that's an example of the callous way Hanford workers are treated once they get sick.
They get rid of you. You're no good anymore. We've used you to the extent we can. They don't think that we're people out there, that we have families that care about us, and it's just go in, get the job done at all costs.
We found this is standard protocol at Hanford, where the workers' compensation program isn't run by our state's L&I, but by the Department of Energy itself. They're self-insured. A government study in 2004 showed twice as many Hanford workers are denied claims compared with the state average.
Undescribable what they've done to my family. They don't care. They don't even know we exist. But something's got to be done.
The problems were too big.
This is the man who says he'll do just that. Kevin Smith's been the top federal official at Hanford for a year and a half. He says he's just now hearing about these cases and pledges to find answers.
If a worker is impacted, that came here and did national security work for the good of the nation in the Cold War, they ought to be treated appropriately. And we'll chase that and see what the problem is. And where we might have a disconnect.
But people like Barb Sal want to know, where were the managers before? And what about the other Washington, where it appears the Department of Energy has set up a system for the little guy to fail?
Washington, D.C. is like just turning their back on the fact that Hanford exists, that it is as contaminated as it is, and that it is killing people.
Working at Hanford did kill Gary Sal. He died 3 years ago at the age of 57.
I miss everything about him. Everything. On a daily basis. I just want him back.